Welcome, everyone, to the Unfiltered Podcast. Lee Stephenson here, Executive Director of Church Planting.
I'm Danny Parmalee, and I oversee church planting for Converge Mid-America.
And we are recording live from Orlando today, and we got a special guest with us, Walter Angelica, the church planter right here in our presence, the pastor of Iglesia Ciudad, started in Jacksonville, but has recently and continuously expanded. So you're about 10 years old.
Yes, sir.
And I'll have you just take a moment, Walter, share a little bit of your story and why did you pick Jacksonville, Florida as your landing point to start your first church, and talk to us a little bit about where you're at now when it comes to the church as a whole.
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's an honor for me to be with you guys. And if you don't understand my thick Southern accent, I'm sure you guys are going to print the transcript at the end of the program so you can read everything that I'm trying to say. Well, my name is Walter. I'm originally from Argentina. I've been in the country for for the last 20 years. I moved to Jacksonville because someone gave me an opportunity to do my seminary work. So the Logos University was located in Jacksonville, and after I graduated, I decided to go back home, and they asked me to work for the university. And after that, I worked for an American church, and I was ready to go back, but it didn't work out, and I ended up responding to God's call in Jacksonville, Florida. That's where everything started.
Now, Jacksonville as a whole would not necessarily, like I've heard you say, like it's not a hub of Spanish speakers.
Right, definitely not. This is, if you're thinking about planting a Latino church, Jacksonville is now the more diverse and demographic city in the entire United States. We only have between 4 to 7% of Latinos. So it's a very small community. Although Jacksonville is a big city, we don't have a great number of Latino family in Jacksonville.
Hey, as long as this is unfiltered, Lee, you said Hispanic, you responded Latino. What's the difference between Latino and Hispanic, or is there not? Or is it a matter of preference? Or
Well, actually, I've been fascinated lately study about different culture and where the word culture come from. And the reason I use Latino is because we use Latino, Hispanic. This is a reality. We are 21 different nations melting into one new name. So it doesn't matter if you're Argentinian, Mexican, Puerto Rican, you end up with a new title called Latino. So it's a last name that we inherit somehow from somewhere. So, but a Latino, Hispanic, for me, in my context, is not much of a difference.
So why do you prefer Latino, or would someone be like offending someone if I said, hey, are you Hispanic, or Hispanic churches or Hispanic church planter in comparison to Latino?
Well, I like to use the word Latino because I come from Latin America, so it makes me feel more like, I'm from South America and Central America. So that's what as a first thing that comes to my mind. So, but it's perfectly okay. You can call someone Latino, Hispanic is perfectly fine. But please don't call me Mexican, assuming that every Latino is a Mexican. I know Americans are geographically challenged. For you guys, everything up north is Canada, everything up south is Mexico. There's hundreds of countries up there. Just grab them up. You will be surprised.
I love it.
Oh,
Walter.
my gosh, it's so
good.
Thanks
for re-educating us on
good.
that. Now, you're not just one congregation at this point. So you've continued to expand and have a heart to reach more and more Spanish speakers, specifically in the state of Florida right now. But you have a heart even beyond that to see more people come to Jesus and hear the gospel in their language, Amen. Which I think is part of all of our hearts when it comes to being ministers of the gospel. Talk about where you're at now when it comes to congregations and what were the struggles that you had to go through to go from 1 to 2 and now 2 to 3?
Well, when we started the church, I thought God was punishing us. When we started a congregation, we started church and we thought it's going to be only old ladies who don't speak a word of English, and that would be the rest of the story. But it happened, the reality is that many families, young families, decided to join us with kids, professional, fully bilingual. and we realized that God was doing something. And regardless of the side of the church, I believe that every congregation that is healthy need to grow to some point and degree. There's a group of people that believe that, we will concentrate on the quality, so we're not going to grow. And although I'm a single child, I'm glad that many of my friends that have brothers and sisters, or they're the youngest, the oldest or the youngest, I'm glad that the moms don't decide to, well, only going to have one kid, that we're going to concentrate on the quality of that kid. I'm glad that moms decided to have multiple kids. What I'm trying to say that every congregation should think, I don't know about using the terms exponentially, but decided to grow. This is one of the values of our church, to grow. One small group, two small group teams. We started in Jacksonville 10 years ago, and the church grew. 6 years later, or 7 years later, we thought there was something. It was great. We add more services. We even add English services. We hope to launch a full campus in the future.
So
let
me pause you right there.
Yeah.
Like, you went from just being Spanish to actually being in 2 languages.
Right. So right now, let me tell you the reality. We have 4 services in 3 cities in 2 languages, but we're trying to be one church. Let me say that again. We have 4 services. We are in 3 cities. We speak 2 languages, and we're trying to be one church. Complex, definitely complex. To the point that I spoke to one of my teachers, and I told him about the complexity of this task, and I asked my professor, what should I consider? Because we want to be multicultural, multi-generational church in multiple locations. And he told me, you have to consider this: suicide. And he was telling me the truth. It's super difficult. And there's challenges. I mean, we went from 1 services to 2 services to an English service. And then we decided to start a new congregation in a nearby city. And I did one of the more difficult things for me, just let people go. We set aside 20 of our best leaders, the more generous leaders, the more mature leaders, and we add them 40 of the members that we don't like anymore. And we put them in a package, and we send them to a city called Orange Park, and they started a congregation. And they have been growing, I believe, faster than the main campus.
Walter, so within the Latino church culture, is church planting kind of like the norm? It is in evangelical white now. Church planting is kind of like at least on the radar. Is that true of Latino kind of church culture? And then second of all, what about multi-site? So again, now that's kind of the norm. Or did you also have extra barriers? Because even within your own subculture, if you will, at the church, it's like, well, wait, why would we do this? Mm-hmm. Do you understand kind of what I'm asking?
Definitely, we're not the norm. My training for church planting back home was an empty head and an empty hand. So if you have an empty head and an empty head, you can baptize someone and send them to plant a church. That was the strategy. And thank God I learned a few things about how to plant a church. But one of the things that we noticed that in order to plant a church, in many of the contexts of the Latino community is through splits. So that's how you plant churches. You split one. But
you're saying in a negative sense,
in a negative way.
Like, there's a fight, and so now these 20 people go off, and they're all mad.
That's church planting.
And that's church planting.
That's called church planting. So we were one of the few that we implement things like in Jacksonville, we were one of the first mobile churches. We rented a university and we set up and tear down. That was not usual. Normal. And the fact that we plant a church within the same vision and value, trying to embrace unity among diversity, even within our own church. We have 21 different people that call Iglesia Ciudad their church, but they come from different backgrounds. So it has been a challenge, but has been a beautiful challenge.
Well, Walter, I appreciate you sharing the story, and it really is a remarkable thing of what God has done in the last 10 years and your heart to reach more and more with the good news of who Jesus is. And it's evident, your heart for your people and your heart for the state of Florida. And now that you're in 3 different cities and 2 different languages and 4 different services, I love that, but a heart of being one in the midst of that. Any unique challenges that, just as we kind of wrap up the conversation, that you've learned as a leader leading 3 different locations in the midst of COVID, in the midst of a pandemic, that you would just say for our listeners that are out there that may identify with similar challenges?
Many. We have this new idea to plant here in Orlando, Florida, and I'm understanding that the cultures, and I'm not talking about ethnicity, I'm talking about what we generate as a church. Each church has their own culture. Actually, it's been studied that culture comes from the word cultivate. So we are cultivating different cultures for our churches. And once we moved to Orlando, we realized that the culture in Orlando, the rhythms in our church is completely different. And we are struggling with trying to figure out the things that work in Jacksonville don't work in Orange Park. The thing that work in Orange Park is not necessarily working here in Orlando. But struggling. I mean, there's not been an easy journey for all of us. And COVID definitely is not helping the process at all. But I do believe on the traditional form of the church. We all for technology. We broadcast our messages. We do all that. But I'm still convinced that when the people of God are in the presence of God, the power of God manifests. Let me say that again. When the people of God are in the presence of God, the power of God manifests. So we're doing everything we possibly can just to get back as a church. And we're up to 65% of capacity when it comes to COVID and all the limitations. But be flexible, follow the Lord, keep your faith fresh, your vision open. Always seek the well-being of the city wherever you are.
Love it. Love it. Well, thanks for taking the time to share a little bit of your story. And it's been a great journey, and can't wait to see how the journey continues for you and the leaders that you've raised up around you. For our listeners, thanks for tuning in as well. This has been the Unfiltered Podcast. Till next time, keep it real.